A truth told too late is just a confession looking for a discount. Chosen ones, let me warn you. This is not just another spill the tea moment. We are about to talk about the kind of truth that doesn't heal wounds. It rips off the bandages and shows how deep they really go. You see, according to psychological studies, most people don't tell the truth because they've had a change of heart. They tell it because their lie has become more dangerous to carry than the truth itself. And in this case, the danger has reached boiling point. Right now, there is a person out there who is sitting on information so explosive, so incriminating, that people are literally begging them to come clean. But here's the twist. They aren't thinking about saving you. They're thinking about saving themselves. And the funniest part, they actually believe that telling you now, after all the damage is done, will somehow make them look noble. Bless their little delusional hearts. Stick with me, because once you hear why this truth won't save them, and how the timing has cursed their redemption attempt, you'll never see confessions the same way again. This isn't about gossip. This is about watching someone try to swim after setting the ocean on fire. Number one, they're not begging for justice. They're begging for a bargain. They're not begging for justice. They're begging for a bargain. That's the core of it. When someone has been sitting on the truth for this long, their sudden urgency to speak up isn't born from moral awakening. It's born from the realization that their silence no longer works in their favor. At this stage, their concern isn't about clearing your name, healing old wounds, or even righting the wrongs they caused. Their concern is about damage control, specifically their own. The begging isn't a sign that they're finally choosing the right side. It's a sign that they're desperate to negotiate how the truth comes out. They want to control the pace, the tone, and the framing so they can soften the blow on themselves. If they can confess before someone else exposes them, they think they can still spin the story to make themselves look like a reluctant hero rather than a willing participant in the wrong. They want the credit for doing the right thing, without paying the price for having done the wrong thing in the first place. When people reach this stage, they start treating truth like currency. They try to trade it for lighter judgment, fewer consequences, and sometimes even sympathy. They become strategic with their words, revealing just enough to appear brave, but leaving out enough to protect their own image. They tell themselves it's still honesty, but in reality it's a bargain wrapped in confession. And while they may fool outsiders who don't know the full story, they can't fool the person who's lived through the wreckage, you. The irony here is that the bargain they're hoping for doesn't exist. They think that timing the truth will allow them to escape the fallout, but what they don't realize is that truth delayed is trust destroyed. By waiting until the pressure is unbearable, they've shown that the truth was never their priority. Survival was. And once you see that, there's no going back. So when everyone is begging them to come tell you the truth, understand this. It's not because they want to rescue you from lies. It's because they want to rescue themselves from the full weight of exposure. But there are some things you simply can't bargain your way out of, and this is one of them. Number two, the truth they're holding can't undo the damage, only expose it. The truth they're holding can't undo the damage, only expose it. That's the cruel reality most people don't want to face. When someone has carried a lie for this long, they often believe that finally telling the truth will somehow act like a reset button. But life doesn't work that way. Words can admit what happened, but they can't rewind time. They can't erase the pain, rebuild the trust, or undo the ripple effect of choices that were made in secret. Once damage has been done, truth doesn't heal it. It simply shines a light on how deep and deliberate the wound really was. When this truth comes out, it won't suddenly make the scars fade. Instead, it will confirm what you've suspected all along, that the harm wasn't accidental and that it took intentional silence for it to last this long. That's the part they don't want to think about. They want to believe that their confession will make them look courageous. But what it actually does is expose how long they were willing to let the lie live. It reveals their priorities, their alliances, and the fact that your well-being was never at the top of their list. This is why late truth feels so heavy. It doesn't arrive with the freshness of honesty. It arrives with the weight of delay, and that delay changes everything. The truth now becomes evidence, not restoration. It's proof of how long they watched the damage unfold without stepping in. And the worst part, the longer the lie lived, the more roots it grew, and the more people it hurt. So, when they finally speak, it won't be a moment of redemption. It will be a moment of revelation, not about what happened, but about who they really are. People sometimes forget that telling the truth late can be just as damning as never telling it at all. Because by the time they release it, the harm has already cemented itself into the story, and no confession can rewrite history. In the end, their truth won't save anyone, especially not them. It will simply confirm what's already been lived, and in doing so, it will make their silence look louder than any lie they ever told. Number 3. Their motive isn't mercy. It's fear of exposure from another source. Their motive isn't mercy. It's fear of exposure from another source. That's the real engine behind their sudden interest in doing the right thing. For the longest time, silence was their safest weapon. It kept them in control, it shielded them from accountability, and it allowed them to shape the narrative however they pleased. But now, something has shifted. Someone else knows. Someone else has the same truth, maybe even a fuller version of it, and that knowledge has turned their silence into a ticking time bomb. They aren't speaking because they've grown a conscience or been moved by guilt. They're speaking because they no longer have the luxury of being the gatekeeper of the story. When they realize that someone else could expose them without their spin, panic sets in. They want to beat that person to the punch so they can control how the truth lands. If they tell it first, they think they can set the tone, soften the blow, and make themselves appear as if they were always leaning toward honesty. This is what makes their confession so hollow. It's not bravery. It's strategy. It's not a moral stand. It's a race against time. They're trying to get ahead of the story, not because it will help you, but because they think it will help them. They've seen enough to know that when someone else tells the truth, it comes raw and unfiltered. But when they tell it, they can crop it, polish it, and sprinkle in just enough emotional bait to make themselves seem like the victim of circumstance rather than the architect of harm. What they fail to see is that this type of timing reveals everything. People can sense when truth is delivered out of self-preservation instead of integrity. It carries a different tone, a different energy. It feels rehearsed, managed, and calculated because it is. The very act of trying to beat someone else to the reveal exposes the fact that they were never planning to tell you in the first place. In the end, this isn't an act of mercy. It's a defensive move by someone who has realized that the truth, once out of their hands, will strip them of every ounce of control they've been clinging to. And that's the kind of exposure they fear most. Number 4. They're hoping truth will be a shortcut to forgiveness. They're hoping truth will be a shortcut to forgiveness, as if the act of confessing automatically wipes the slate clean. In their mind, admitting what they did is a grand gesture, a magic key that should instantly unlock your compassion and close the book on their wrongdoing. They see the truth as a transaction. I give you honesty, you give me forgiveness. What they fail to realize is that forgiveness, especially after deep betrayal, isn't triggered by words alone. It's built on changed behavior, genuine remorse, and the willingness to make amends, none of which can be faked for long. This is where their miscalculation shows. They believe that telling you the truth is the hard part, when in reality, it's the easiest thing they could do at this point. The real work would be showing consistency, rebuilding trust, and proving that the same patterns won't repeat. But that requires humility and time, and they don't want either. They want the fast track. They want the relief of being forgiven without the inconvenience of earning it. They underestimate you because they assume you're still standing where they left you, vulnerable, doubting yourself, craving closure. They imagine that their confession will feel like water in a desert, that you'll welcome it without question because you've been starving for it. What they don't see is that you've already been through the storm, survived it, and rebuilt parts of yourself without their help. You're not desperate for their truth anymore. You've learned to live without it. And when you're no longer desperate, you can see manipulation for what it is. This is why truth without transformation is dangerous. It becomes another tool for control. They can present themselves as the brave soul who finally came clean while quietly avoiding any responsibility for the aftermath of their actions. They can spin their confession as a moral victory, when in reality, it's just another layer of self-interest. So while they may hope the truth will fast-track them into your forgiveness, what they're really doing is showing you how little they've changed. Because anyone who truly understands the weight of what they've done knows that the truth isn't the ending. It's only the beginning of proving they're not the same person who caused the damage. Number 5. The confession will be crafted, not complete. The confession will be crafted, not complete. That's the part you have to be ready for. When someone has lived with a lie long enough, they don't just flip a switch and start serving raw, unfiltered honesty. By the time they're ready to come clean, they've already rehearsed, revised, and reshaped the story in their mind to make sure it doesn't completely destroy them. What they give you will be the version that costs them the least, not the version that reveals the most. They'll frame their words carefully, like a picture on a wall. You'll get sharp detail in the areas that make them look remorseful, confused, or even victimized. But the parts that show deliberate harm, calculated betrayal, or pure self-interest, those will be cropped out. They'll call it telling the truth, because technically they are sharing pieces of it. But those pieces will be chosen with precision. The messiest, ugliest details will stay locked away where they think you'll never find them. They may even sprinkle in just enough self-incrimination to seem authentic. This is the oldest trick in the book. Admit to something small so it looks like you're holding nothing back, all while the real offense remains buried. They want the credit for being transparent, without paying the price for full exposure. This way, if the truth ever comes out in its entirety, they can claim they already told you most of it, and that anything left out was irrelevant or forgotten. The danger here is that partial truth can be more deceptive than a complete lie. When you're given fragments, your mind will naturally try to fill in the gaps. If you trust them enough, you might fill those gaps with assumptions that make them look better than they really are. And that's exactly what they're counting on. So while they may present their confession as a brave and selfless act, understand that it's been engineered for optics. It's not the raw canvas. It's a carefully curated snapshot, meant to suggest effort, remorse, and honesty, all while protecting the very things that would change how you see them forever. And if they have their way, you'll never know what's missing. Number 6. They don't want to clear your name. They want to clear their conscience. They don't want to clear your name. They want to clear their conscience. That's the difference people often miss. On the surface, it might look like they're finally stepping up to defend you, to set the record straight, to undo the damage their silence or lies caused. But deep down, their real mission isn't justice for you. It's relief for themselves. Carrying a heavy truth for too long starts to feel like a weight pressing on the soul, and eventually they're less concerned about how it affected you and more concerned about how it's affecting them. Revealing the truth becomes a selfish form of redemption. They can tell themselves they're doing the right thing without ever addressing why they didn't do it sooner. And when they finally speak, they'll expect recognition for their so-called bravery, as if this single act erases the years of damage they allowed to pile up. They're not motivated by the thought of restoring your reputation. They're motivated by the thought of restoring their own sense of peace. This is why their version of the truth often comes with an air of self-congratulation. They want you, and everyone else, to see them as the one who stepped in when it mattered, even though it's painfully obvious that it only mattered to them once they started feeling the consequences of holding it in. Their confession isn't a gift. It's an emotional offloading. They dump the truth at your feet, hoping it will lighten their load, while leaving you to deal with the shock, the hurt, and the fallout all over again. What they don't realize is that this kind of self-serving honesty often makes things worse. You can feel when someone is telling you something for their own benefit rather than yours. The tone is different. The timing is suspicious and the delivery feels hollow. It's not about lifting you up. It's about removing the guilt that's been gnawing at them. So while the world might see it as an act of courage, you'll know better. It's not courage to speak when silence becomes unbearable for the speaker. True courage would have been telling the truth when it could have spared you harm. This is just conscience clearing, dressed up as heroism. Number 7. They're only speaking because silence has become dangerous. They're only speaking because silence has become dangerous. For as long as their silence benefited them, protecting their image, shielding them from blame, or keeping them in good standing with the right people, they held on to it without hesitation. It wasn't about loyalty, morality, or strategy back then. It was about convenience. Keeping quiet was easy when it kept them safe and comfortable. But now the balance has shifted. The same silence that once worked in their favor has started working against them. Maybe whispers have started circulating. Maybe someone else is close to spilling the same truth they've been hiding. Maybe circumstances have changed so much that their silence now makes them look suspicious instead of innocent. Whatever the trigger, the reality is this. They're not speaking because it's the right thing to do. They're speaking because it's the safer thing to do for themselves. This is where their performance begins. They will frame their sudden honesty as a moral awakening, a sign that they couldn't live with themselves any longer. But the truth is, they could live with themselves just fine, until the risk of staying quiet outweighed the risk of speaking up. Now that silence could cost them relationships, opportunities, or even freedom, they've decided that confessing is the smarter move. It's nothing more than a survival tactic disguised as virtue. They've calculated that speaking now gives them a chance to control the narrative, paint themselves as cooperative, and maybe even gain sympathy. And the sad part is, some people will buy it. To those on the outside, it will look like an act of bravery. To you, it will be crystal clear that this is simply the next chess move in their game of self-preservation. The danger in moments like this is that their timing will be mistaken for sincerity. But sincerity is about motive, not just action. And when the motive is to protect themselves rather than protect the truth, you can be sure their words are not coming from a place of courage. They're coming from fear. This isn't about doing what's right. It's about doing what's necessary to save themselves. And that's a very different thing. Number 8. They're underestimating how much you already know. They're underestimating how much you already know. In their mind, they're preparing to drop a bombshell, something so big, so dramatic, that it will leave you stunned and speechless. They've probably rehearsed the moment in their head, imagining your face frozen in disbelief as they finally reveal the truth. But what they don't realize is that you've been living in the wreckage of their actions for far too long to still be clueless. The pieces they think they're about to hand you, you've already been collecting them one by one, quietly putting the puzzle together without their help. When you've been in the aftermath this long, patterns reveal themselves. Lies start to contradict each other. Behaviors repeat. Small slip-ups from different people connect like dots until the picture becomes too clear to ignore. You may not have had their full confession, but you've had enough signs to know exactly what happened. And in some ways, your version is even sharper, because it's based on what they tried to hide, not what they chose to tell. That's the part they can't wrap their head around. They think they still control the information, when in reality the damage they left behind has already spoken louder than they ever could. Your understanding isn't built on their words, it's built on lived experience. And lived experience has a way of stripping away the illusions they worked so hard to maintain. So when they finally speak, expecting to watch you unravel under the weight of their truth, they'll be met with something they didn't plan for. Calm. Not because it doesn't matter, but because you've already adjusted your life around the reality they're only just now willing to admit. Their big reveal will feel like a rerun of a show you've already watched too many times. This is the danger of underestimating someone who's had to survive in the dark. They become experts at seeing without being told. They think they're stepping into the role of the storyteller, but in truth, all they're doing is confirming what you've known all along. And that confirmation won't give them the power they hoped for. It will only highlight how late and how little their words really are. Number 9. They're trying to control the narrative one last time. They're trying to control the narrative one last time. Even in the moment they claim to be coming clean, they can't resist the urge to manipulate how the story is told. They'll lace their confession with strategic omissions, subtle distortions, and carefully placed emotional triggers designed to make you see them in a softer light. Instead of presenting the truth in its raw form, they'll rearrange it, moving events around, tweaking timelines, and conveniently blurring certain details so that the ugliest parts of their role are harder to pin down. One of their favorite tactics will be planting seeds of doubt. They'll say things in a way that leaves you questioning whether you remember certain events correctly. They might even act surprised at your version of things, subtly implying that your memory is flawed or that you misunderstood the situation entirely. This tactic isn't about clearing the air. It's about clouding it just enough so they can still hide in the fog. They'll also slip in emotional bait, hoping to trigger sympathy. This could be through playing up their own hardships at the time, painting themselves as under pressure, or highlighting moments where they struggled with the decision to stay silent, as if wrestling with the choice somehow makes the choice itself less harmful. It's all part of the performance. Recast themselves as a reluctant participant rather than a willing betrayer. By doing this, they get to frame their role as complicated, conflicted, even noble in some twisted way. They want the final record of events to reflect that they didn't simply withhold the truth. They agonized over it, protected certain people, or waited for the right moment. They will do anything to turn a clear betrayal into a muddied moral dilemma, because in the messiness of blurred lines, they can hide. What they don't realize is that these tactics expose them more than they protect them. The need to reshape the narrative, even at the end, shows that control was always their priority. Not the truth, not accountability, and certainly not your healing. And once you see that, their confession becomes less about closure and more about witnessing them cling to the last scraps of an image they've already lost. Number 10. The truth will cost them more than the lie ever did. The truth will cost them more than the lie ever did. For years, they've managed to live under the protection of silence, moving through life without having to face the full weight of what they've done. The lie, or the absence of truth, allowed them to maintain their relationships, their image and their position in the eyes of others. It was their safety net, their shield, their way of controlling how the world saw them. But the moment the real story slips from their mouth, that shield shatters. What they don't realize is that the cost of truth is rarely paid in private. It's public, messy, and often irreversible. The lie might have chipped at their conscience, but the truth will bulldoze their reputation. People who once trusted them will see them differently. Those who stood by them will feel betrayed, not just because of what they did, but because of how long they hid it. Friends may turn into critics, allies may turn into strangers, and the carefully curated image they've built will start to collapse in ways they can't stop. The loss won't end with relationships. Opportunities will dry up, invitations will stop coming. Certain rooms they once walked into freely will now be closed to them. Some people may forgive, but they will never forget. And in the world of trust, forgetting is what allows full restoration. Without it, there's always a shadow, always a question mark hanging over their name. This is why they've clung to the lie for so long. Not because they believed it was right, but because it was easier. The lie let them function without disruption, without having to watch their life unravel. But once the truth is out, there's no rewinding, no undoing the moment when their own words opened the floodgates. And here's the cruel irony. They think telling the truth will finally give them relief, but what it will really give them is a new reality where that truth follows them everywhere. It will become part of their story in a way that overshadows their excuses, their explanations, and their attempts at image repair. The lie cost them very little. The truth will cost them everything they were trying to protect. Number 11. They don't want you free. They want you dependent on their version. They don't want you free. They want you dependent on their version. This is one of the most calculated moves in the game. When someone finally decides to tell the truth after holding it hostage for so long, they can present it in a way that makes it seem like they've done you a tremendous favor. They'll want you to believe that without them, you'd still be lost in the dark. And because they're the one delivering the story, they'll position themselves as the central figure, the key holder to your clarity, your vindication, and your peace. This is where the real trap is set. Instead of their confession being a release that sets you free, they make it something you feel indebted for. They'll subtly remind you, or outright say, that you should appreciate their courage to speak up. They'll expect gratitude, as if telling the truth was an act of charity rather than a long overdue responsibility. By doing this, they ensure that the power dynamic still leans in their favor. You're not truly liberated. You're tethered to their version of events. And make no mistake, their version will be edited. They'll shape it to protect certain people, shift certain timelines, and paint themselves in the best light possible. If you challenge them, they can claim you're being ungrateful or dismissive of the effort it took for them to come forward. It's emotional leverage at its finest. They've created a situation where rejecting their version of the truth feels like rejecting the truth altogether. This tactic also gives them ongoing influence. If anyone questions the story later, they remain the original source, the one people go back to for clarification. That means they can continue to drip-feed details, twist interpretations, and steer perception long after the initial confession. You might have the truth, but it's a truth still living in their shadow. The most dangerous part? This dependency can make you doubt your own understanding of what happened. Over time, their retelling can subtly replace your own memory, leaving you tied to their narrative without even realizing it. And that's exactly what they want. Not for you to be free, but for you to live in a version of the truth that keeps them in control. Number 12. The truth won't save them. Because the timing has cursed it. The truth won't save them because the timing has cursed it. Truth is powerful, but it's not immune to expiration. When it's withheld for too long, it stops being a tool of redemption and becomes evidence of neglect. They could have spoken when it mattered, when the lie was still fresh, when their voice could have stopped the damage or at least softened the blow. But they didn't. They chose silence, and that silence shaped outcomes that can't be undone. Now, when they finally decide to speak, the truth doesn't land as healing. It lands as proof that they valued their comfort more than your freedom. Every word they say will be measured against the time they spent saying nothing. The confession won't feel noble. It will feel calculated. It will reek of self-preservation, of someone trying to clear the smoke only after the fire has burned the house down. Timing has a way of stamping truth with intent. Early truth smells like courage. Late truth smells like survival. And the moment they open their mouth now, people will sense the difference. The weight of their delay will be heavier than the content of their confession. It won't just be what they finally admit. It will be the unspoken reality of why now that hangs in the air. The tragedy for them is that the truth, once cursed by bad timing, often backfires. Instead of earning sympathy, it raises suspicion. Instead of repairing their image, it exposes their cowardice. People will replay the months or years of silence and realize that their voice could have prevented betrayals, misunderstandings, or even loss. But they stayed quiet until silence became a liability. In the end, the truth will not be their savior. It will be their mirror, reflecting back the selfishness, fear, and hesitation that dictated their choices. And when truth arrives this late, it doesn't open doors, it closes them. Because the timing has cursed it, their words will feel less like light breaking through darkness and more like the flicker of a candle lit in a house that's already ash. Number 13. They're afraid of what the truth will confirm about you. They're afraid of what the truth will confirm about you, because the moment it comes out, it erases the narrative they've tried so hard to build about you. Once they speak, it won't just be a confession. It will be an unintentional crown placed on your discernment. It will prove that your instincts weren't wild guesses, that your warnings weren't paranoia, and that your so-called overreactions were actually grounded in reality. This is their deepest fear, not just being exposed for what they did, but exposing you for who you truly are, someone who saw through the fog when everyone else was blind. Your ability to connect dots, to sense shifts, to catch what wasn't said, all of it will be vindicated in an instant. And when that happens, the labels they or others tried to slap on you, too sensitive, dramatic, crazy, troublemaker, will fall to the ground with no way to stick again. The truth, once spoken, will rewrite the history they've been narrating. People who doubted you will have to replay old conversations in their mind and admit that you were the one holding the real story the entire time. It will reveal that you weren't stumbling in the dark. You were navigating with a light they couldn't extinguish. That's dangerous for them because it shifts the power dynamic forever. When someone's whole strategy relies on making you look unsure or unstable, the worst thing that can happen to them is for you to be proven right. Because now, every future disagreement, every warning you give, every gut feeling you express will carry weight. People will remember that you've been right before, even when it was uncomfortable to believe you. That's why they've dragged their feet, why they've delayed, why they've chosen silence until now. The truth won't just damage them, it will elevate you. And in their mind, that's almost worse. Because when the truth confirms who you are, it not only clears your name, it solidifies your authority. And once that happens, they'll never again have the power to make you doubt yourself. Number 14. The truth won't redeem them. It will seal their legacy. The truth won't redeem them. It will seal their legacy. They're imagining that their confession will be remembered as an act of courage, a moment where they finally did the right thing. But that's not how history works. The moment the words leave their mouth, they won't be cast as the hero of the story. They'll be permanently recorded as the villain who created the need for a confession in the first place. People won't remember the relief in their tone, they'll remember the wreckage in their wake. The headlines in hearts and minds won't read, "They told the truth." It will read, "They were the reason the truth had to be told." Their name will be tied, not to the act of setting the record straight, but to the chain of events that made the truth necessary. The confession will not erase the years of lies, manipulation, and silence. It will highlight them. It will shine a spotlight on how long they kept quiet, how much damage was done in that time, and how deliberate their choices were. This is the part they don't see. Confession doesn't reset the scoreboard, it freezes it. The final tally will show not just the harm they caused, but also the selfish delay before they acted. Their redemption moment will instead be a timestamp proving how late they arrived to integrity's table. And when people look back, they'll see the gap between the moment they could have spoken and the moment they finally did. And that gap will define them more than the confession ever could. In the end, they'll discover that truth doesn't always wash you clean. Sometimes it's the ink that writes your story and permanent marker. And once that happens, there's no rewriting your role. Only living with the fact that you'll forever be remembered as the reason the truth had to crawl into the light. The truth, when it finally comes, is never just about revealing what was hidden. It's about exposing the motives, timing, and consequences that shaped the silence before it. The person everyone is begging to speak up isn't stepping into the light out of courage or compassion. They're moving from fear, self-preservation, and a desperate bid to control what's left of their story. Their confession won't undo the damage, erase the scars, or rewrite the past. Instead, it will confirm what you already know, that their silence was a choice, their delay was calculated, and their version of the truth will always be crafted to protect themselves, not to free you. They don't want you free. They want you tethered to their narrative, dependent on their version of events. They hope that speaking now will shortcut their way to forgiveness and clear their conscience. But what they don't realize is that the timing has cursed their truth. It won't redeem them, it will seal their legacy as the architects of betrayal. And in the end, when their words finally surface, they will validate every instinct you had, every warning you gave, and every moment you questioned what was really going on. This is the brutal reality of waiting for the truth from someone who held it hostage. The truth isn't a salvation for them, nor a gift to you. It's a reckoning. And that reckoning doesn't belong to the one who speaks it last. It belongs to the one who lived through the silence first. If you've found strength in this truth, make sure you share it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more insights that cut deeper than the surface. Because knowing the truth is only the beginning. Owning it is where real power lives. If this message hit home and gave you a new perspective, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss the raw, unfiltered truth we uncover here. Like the video, if it challenged what you thought you knew, drop a comment below to share your story or your take. And please, share this with someone who needs to hear it.